choice of Beatrice and Eugenie to be born to those parents. You don't choose your parents, I get it. But it's very clear that they are just as egocentric, just as narcissistic as their parents. They are cash hungry.
They weren't children, they were adults. Those 8 words from royal biographer Andrew Lownie just shattered the carefully crafted image of princesses Beatrice and Eugenie. For years, we were told the sisters were just innocent bystanders caught in their father's wreckage, but in early 2026, the silence finally broke. A massive dump of 3 million unsealed documents has exposed a paper trail the palace desperately tried to keep buried. From secret bank transfers to at-your-service emails sent to a convicted offender. Now the king is moving in for a final purge. The royal lodge is gone, the Ascot invites have been pulled, and the perfect princess narrative is officially on fire. As the world watches the York legacy crumble, a haunting question remains. Were they really just collateral damage, or were they hiding in plain sight the whole time?
Lownie wrote this book, it's called Entitled. And he said, this is a guy, Andrew Lownie, that's been studying the Yorks for decades. And he said that the girls are just as bad and that they will happily throw their parents under the bus if they can hang on to HRH.
5 days. That is all it took. Just 120 hours after a convicted offender walked out of a Florida prison, a private lunch was served in Palm Beach that would eventually haunt the monarchy for decades. This wasn't a secret meeting in a dark alley. It was a sit-down meal with 2 women who, until that moment, the public viewed as the future of the royal family. But here is the part the palace doesn't want you to calculate. In 2008, Beatrice was 20, Eugenie was 19. They weren't toddlers being dragged along to a playdate. They were legal adults with their own passports and their own voices. The story we've been fed for years is that they were tricked by their parents.
If they continue to exploit their royal status for their own personal financial gain, then I think they're going to become increasingly unpopular, and that's going to be a big problem for the king as well.
But as the 2026 DOJ files reveal, the logistics of that afternoon weren't accidental. Their mother didn't just show up, she coordinated. Emails show a flurry of activity, address swaps, car service offers, and a level of comfort that suggests this wasn't their first time in that orbit. When you're a princess of the realm, your security detail knows exactly who you are meeting. Your office knows. You know. Yet they sat there, they ate, they laughed, and not once did they look at the man across the table and ask why he had just spent time behind bars for crimes against a minor. But the lunch was only the beginning of the York protection program. While the public was told that the family had completely cut ties, the unsealed documents tell a much more disturbing story of at-your-service loyalty. Behind the scenes, the daughters were being positioned as assets, traveling on international trade trips that blurred the line between royal duty and private gain. It raises a chilling question. Was their presence at that table a sign of naivety, or was it a calculated move to show that the Yorks were still open for business? As investigators dig deeper into the digital footprints left behind, the excuses are starting to run thin. Because as it turns out, the lunch wasn't just a social visit, it was the opening act for a series of financial transfers that make the innocent bystander defense look like a total fantasy. And what was discovered in their personal bank accounts is about to change the conversation forever.
Being asked of Eugenie and Beatrice, the 2 princesses, who I think were much more intertwined with their parents at nefarious activities than we have so far.
Follow the money and you'll find the truth. While the world was distracted by the optics of a social lunch, something much more concrete was moving through the shadows: cold, hard cash. For years, the York Protection Program relied on the idea that the sisters were financially independent from their parents' messy dealings. But the 2026 unsealed ledgers just turned that narrative into a crime scene. We aren't talking about small change or royal allowances. We're talking about $1 million mystery that landed directly in their personal bank accounts, and nobody can explain why.
But in my own research suggests that they're deeply involved. We know from the Salman Turk case that money was put into their accounts that they could.
It started with a name most people have never heard of, Salman Turk. He was a businessman who eventually faced massive fraud allegations, but before the world knew his name, he was busy funneling money toward the princesses. When banking compliance officers flagged a massive £750,000 transfer, roughly $1 million, the explanation given was wedding gift. But think about that for a second. Why would a man later accused of a multi-million-pound scam be gifting life-changing sums of money to royal daughters he barely knew? The rabbit hole goes deeper. Investigators discovered that this wasn't an isolated incident. The sisters were often present on international trade trips, where the lines between official representation and private equity deals became dangerously blurred. They weren't just there to cut ribbons, they were the closer. Their HRH titles acted as a golden key, opening doors for investors who wanted access to the inner sanctum of the monarchy. But here's the kicker. Every time a door opened, the family office seemed to get a little bit richer. The question isn't just about where the money came from, but what was expected in return. When you accept gifts from individuals with dark histories, you aren't just a princess anymore, you're a liability. And the 2026 DOJ files suggest that the "at your service" attitude didn't just apply to emails, it applied to their bank accounts too. The palace is currently scrambling to find a legal explanation for these transfers, but the public isn't buying it. Because as bad as the money looks, it's the digital evidence that's truly explosive. While the bank transfers prove the involvement, a set of secret emails is about to prove the intent, and what the sisters were saying to their parents' associates behind closed doors makes the innocent bystander defense look like a total lie.
They accompanied Andrew on a lot of these trade trips. They're still trading on the contacts they built up there, not as Mrs. Mosey, but as Her Royal Highness Princess. But yes, all the evidence that I've found points to them being much more involved than people have.
Delete the history and the truth stays buried until the servers start talking back. The most devastating blow to the York Innocence campaign didn't come from a witness, it came from a deleted folder. In early 2026, tech forensics recovered a series of encrypted exchanges that the palace assumed were gone forever. These aren't just polite royal notes, these are the "at your service" emails, a digital paper trail that links the sisters directly to the very people they claimed to be avoiding. One specific thread from the unsealed files has sent shockwaves through the UK. It shows their mother offering up access to the sisters like they were high-end commodities. In one exchange, she writes to a convicted offender, "Beatrice is in London, at your service." Let that sink in. At your service. This isn't the language of a mother protecting her daughters from a predator. It's the language of a business transaction. And according to the newest reports, the sisters weren't just CC'd on these emails, they were active participants in the conversation. But it gets even more uncomfortable. The files reveal that Beatrice was actually in the room during the high-stakes negotiations for that infamous 2019 BBC Newsnight interview. Think about that. She wasn't a child, she was a woman in her 30s, sitting at the table helping to strategize a defense for her father's ties to a global crime ring. If she was truly out of the loop, why was she helping to write the script? Why was she present for the legal briefings? The myth of the naive princess is evaporating in real time. While the sisters maintain a public wall of silence, the 2026 documents show they were frequently used as social bridges. They would attend dinners and events where the financier's name wasn't just a dirty secret, it was a common denominator. The "at your service" emails suggest that the sisters' personal lives were being discussed as leverage to keep the money flowing and the doors open. It's a level of entanglement that goes far beyond a single lunch in Florida. The palace is currently in a state of total panic because these emails prove one thing: the proximity was intentional. They weren't just standing near the fire, they were helping to feed it. But while the digital evidence is damning, the physical reality is about to get much worse because the king has finally seen enough, and his response is a public execution of their royal status that no one saw coming.
But let's move on to some other issues. And there are reports that Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie have been banned from attending Royal Ascot in June. And they won't be allowed to join their family in the royal procession either. This is all due to the Epstein revelations surrounding their parents, Kinsey.
The king has finally stopped asking. In a move that royal watchers are calling a bloodless execution, the 2026 purge of the York family has begun, and it is more brutal than anyone expected. For years, the sisters were protected by the shadow of the throne, but early this year that protection was officially withdrawn. It started with the locks being changed at the Royal Lodge, the 30-room mansion, their childhood home, and a £30 million inheritance is gone. They haven't just lost a house, they've lost their legacy. But the real shocker came just days ago. In a humiliating blow that played out in front of the world's cameras, the sisters were reportedly banned from the royal box and the carriage procession at Ascot. Imagine the scene. The rest of the family glides past in the sunlight, while the blood princesses are left on the sidelines, literally iced out of the institution. Sources say Beatrice was completely blindsided, having believed that a few Christmas photos with the king had saved her. She was wrong. This isn't just a scheduling conflict, it's a systematic erasing of their royal status.
So I have to ask you, now that you've seen the emails, the bank records, and the evidence of that lunch, do you believe Beatrice and Eugenie are truly victims of their father's legacy, or were they active participants who chose to look the other way for the sake of the crown? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know if you think they should keep their titles, or if it's time for them to walk away for good. If you found this deep dive eye-opening, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more unsealed royal truths.